step instructions on this one, so it's going to be really, really practical for you guys. So with that being said, let's get into today's topic. If you are new to the channel, do consider subscribing. We do these live streams every single weekday, so they're there to help you. Today's going to be no comments below, and we'll get to those at the end. Laura's the other side of the camera, so she will be taking those down, and we'll get to those at the end of the topic. And one little announcement as well, so stay tuned for flare-ups and things in the past, but I think the one today is really going to give you that step-by-step instruction going the whole way through in terms of how you can coming from this approach as well. So nice little flowchart on the back. If you are in the premium membership group, I'm going to post this on the Facebook group after the live stream today as well. So where are you? What phase are you in when you've injured your back? Has it flared up? There's going to be two answers to this. You're either in phase one, or you're not in phase one, because it's not a flare-up if you haven't started any rehab. It's just your back's been injured, so to speak, for the first time. So if we're inside phase one, what we'd call phase one is relief-based exercises. Your back's flared up and you've not really done much in the way of rehab. Maybe we're doing some mobilization exercises or other bits and pieces. Some of it we necessarily wouldn't recommend, but you may be doing that, and that's how you've come across this video in particular. So if we're in phase one, I wouldn't even consider that really a flare-up per se. It's more the undulation of having no core stability, etc., and not being able to protect our spine. So nothing really changes. You need to kind of carry on doing that. And that's one of the reasons we recommend don't get stuck in phase one in perpetuity. Different topic, but unless you're stuck in bed all day, not able to move at all, maybe we shouldn't be at home in bed. We should be getting some further investigation. When you are in sort of the phase two, you started maybe doing some strengthening exercises. Maybe you're doing some core stuff, stability stuff that we'd recommend or otherwise. And you're in what we call the phase two, phase three, and you're doing those specific exercises. What's happened with regards to the exercises? Was it the exercises that caused you to read it too much and we kind of felt sore during the workout? That was a bit too much, and it hasn't settled after doing the usual towel and ice. Okay, maybe we've pushed it a little bit too hard. We should be using our treat principle, which I'll touch on later, but we've touched on that numerous times before. Or was it the technique wasn't quite there? We've moved from phase two into phase three, or we've just been a little bit lazy with our exercise, and sometimes the technique errors can come in conjunction with popping up to a new intensity. We just didn't have the strength and stability to hold that good technique for the extra 2 or 3 reps or 1 or 2 sets, and that's caused us to lose a bit of stability, and then we've re-irritated our lower back. So maybe that's what's caused it, and then we can move further down this chain of events as the case may be. But maybe you don't know. I don't know why I'm sore. I did my exercises earlier today, and now it's 3 in the afternoon. We need to try and find out what it was. Is this maybe the usual fluctuation? Maybe every afternoon that's when the pain comes in anyway. Or maybe that's not really any different from the fact that I went trampolining, or was it the fact that I did downhill skiing or mountain biking, or did a class in the gym? What is it that could have find out what it was, so hopefully we can not do that again? Or at least sometimes we do have to do things. Maybe you have to travel to another country or back from another country. Not necessarily so common right now, given what's happening, but that could be a one-off. Maybe you've traveled to see a family member. Well, we have to do those things. And if we accept and resign ourselves that we haven't moved far enough along the recovery process, which I'll get to a little bit later, and that's just going to irritate us, we can then follow further on down these chain of events. But we can know that that's going to be a problem, that long drive. And we see patients in the clinic where they may know that they have a business trip they've got to go on and they can't avoid it, and they mentally prepare themselves essentially to say, look, this is going to bother me, I've got to get it done. But reference to mental health, it can really knock you back if you don't know why these things are happening. But that's why we try to put together this framework for you guys, so you can actually have that framework. Because if when we do have a flare-up, or if we know we're likely to have a flare-up and we have one, the mental effect is so much more diminished. So that's very, very important. But either way, whichever one of these it is, the first action point, and I've put the specific actions in red, the questions are in blue. We need to ask ourselves these questions. We can't just mindlessly follow along. Do phase one the next day. You may want to have a little bit of extra use of the towel and ice combination. You might do that a few more times. Why, you ask? Because invariably it's going to be too much disc, created a bit of irritation. We've done maybe walking around, lugging, traveling, moving suitcases. Extra compression is what's caused the failure. So doing the towel a couple extra times is going to be helpful. It's decompressing, unloading those injured structures for a moment, and obviously the ice there is going to be very, very important. And we'll touch on ice, particularly with reference to the inflammation, in a moment as well. So then we were doing that phase 1 maybe a couple more times a day. That routine really is there as a relief base, and it's the first thing we should do. The last thing we should do is go and start doing rounding exercises to stretch and damage tissues in an inappropriate manner, in an inappropriate balance as well. The next bit here is really, really important. We touched on this yesterday on the live stream about sort of what led to the development of the Back in Shape program and some of the background with it, because some people don't know the history of the program in of itself and how it's been developed. So if you haven't seen that live stream, then definitely traveling or doing the laundry or doing the dishes or cooking meals, all of these tasks put extra stress on our spine, but the exercises themselves have been stability in the spine and mobility in the hips, and address the inflammation. They are safe exercises, and they take you through that progression in a sensible, directed manner. Whenever we do have these injuries, these flare-ups, look at technique, look at intensity, but knowing that those exercises are safe, and actually taking a moment to look back and reflect on the progress. We had some guys on yesterday's live stream, I believe it was, also saying, look, I tried an old intensity of one of the exercises, or a part of my rehab routine the other day, and was sort of shocked at how easy it was, or how much easier it was. Sometimes reflecting back and saying, yeah, but I could this graph here. If you guys can't see it quite clearly, we've got recovery going along here, we've got time going along here, and we've got a rather squiggly lot of parents, we've got this, that, the other, we're having to look after, we're having to deal with whatever the hell's going on in the world at the moment as well. And in terms of our recovery, there is a quote unquote threshold that we need to meet. And if we haven't met that threshold, we haven't gone far as 3 years, 6 years. I've had to have surgery of some description. That gives us an inkling of how long this has actually been a problem. How long has it been affecting us? How long have some of these things needed rectifying but have not been rectified? And therefore, if we can't even do, for example, 1 or 2 of those dead bugs that you start in phase down here, we're below the threshold. We have less than adequate muscular stability to support ourselves. For example, if you're learning to ride a bicycle and you need stabilizers, it's no good just taking the stabilizers off and saying ride, because you're just going to keep falling over. You haven't developed the adequate level of balance to be able to cycle without falling over. It just takes time to build that up to a critical threshold, get those neural pathways working properly, and in the case of Back in Shape, in the case of your back pain, get those muscles up to a degree of competence where they are above this threshold, which is somewhere in and about phase 3. And people start to notice that as they move in and through phase 3, that it, again, each of those phases exposes a little weaknesses that then get addressed in that particular phase. So know that if we have had a longer term problem that's tried lots of things, and we're starting the Back in Shape and we're doing phase 2 maybe, and we're in the middle of that we maybe haven't gone far enough in terms of our strengthening to reach an appropriate level of strength and stability and protection for our spine to compensate for maybe some degenerative change or some other damages that we have in the spine. The severe pain that is often felt, especially if the examples I mentioned earlier are the case, you're doing the cooking or something like that, chopping up some vegetables, or maybe you just moved a small plant pot from one side to the other, or maybe you've been sat down for too long. The inflammation that builds up when we have a quote unquote flare up in our back, it is mostly the fact that there is a significant ramp up in inflammation. We've got some scar tissue, and that is quite large, but the tissue damage, the relative tissue damage, is not as bad. We've got the build up of inflammation. It's a massive build up of inflammation, create a lot of inflammation, but relatively, and a lot of pain, but relatively low significance of actual trauma. And it's conflating a flare-up of inflammation with a serious worsening of injury of tissues, of objective tissues. That really throws people a lot. Now, if you've fallen off and out of the chair and you've got a massive flare-up, and over the next 24 hours it really flares up quite badly, that is going to be the inflammation build-up. And understanding that and going through that cognitive process and saying, well, I didn't actually do anything that would cause significant tissue damage, but I have nicked the area, I've got an inflammatory reaction, and because of the nature, we've discussed this time and time again, those small little holes where the nerves come out, it's created a lot of when you feel that pain, that you feel like you're getting knocked back to square one, but you're not. And we've seen a number of guys in the Back in Shape, and I've seen them in the clinic over the years. It might be a week and you're back up doing the strengthening and stability exercises wherever you were in phase 2, phase 3. You've gone from week 10 days, and all of a sudden after 14 days, you're back up at the same intensity that it took you 6 weeks or 12 weeks to get to in the first place. And it really does make a massive difference to your confidence once you've been through one of those relapses, and seeing just how quickly you can rebound from that. But that's only if we go through these necessary steps in the appropriate order to build up that confidence and rationally address and I would encourage you to go through these questions in your own mind when you do have a relapse, because everyone's going to have one. No one has a clear, smooth pathway to recovery. 5% of whatever you were doing before the relapse. So if it was phase 2, 3 sets of 10. If it was phase 3, 5 sets of 10. Go back in at 50 to 75% off the top of my head. Test something new. So that'll be this. Rest for the rest of the day. Just a normal day. We don't need to be resting, explicitly resting. Some people think I mean by that go and lie in bed for the rest of the day. No, just experience a normal day. Don't test something new and go on a 5-mile jog at the same time. Test the 50 to 75% here, and then just have a normal rest of the day. Rest that night and then evaluate the next day. Evaluate in the context of the usual fluctuations of things. So if you're in the middle of a relapse and your symptoms have raised quite a lot, you're getting symptoms again, reevaluate the impact of that new workout, of going back into this in the context of that particular flare up, that sort of 48 to 72 hours of necessary inflammatory phase that takes place in order to build up a callus, which is then going to release growth factor and is not going to miraculously fix everything. So that would be an unfair test. Then adjust, assuming it went no worse and everything kind of stayed about the same. Side note here, I've already mentioned it, but do not stay in phase 1 for weeks. If we've had the capacity to do daily tasks and we've had a flare-up, or we've done something silly, or we're able to travel to and from various locations, then there is no business, no point. It's just a waste of time staying in phase 1 for weeks on end, or for another 2 weeks just for the sake of going through that process. We need to get back in where we were on the phase 2, phase 3 process. And if we're on for no good reason, we should need to be able to test this and figure out where that level is and then carry on again. And then over the final point here is increasing the intensity of your phase 2 or phase 3 routine above and beyond what you were at before. And that process can take place over many days, weeks and months ahead. And obviously if you're in the phase 3 now, you can add in the flexibility routine as well, because today is a great time to do it. You'll finish it just in time for the new year to start.
See that there are a lot of people are having trouble streaming, and I can see it on my end as well. It's glitching a lot. I don't know, maybe it is the weather. I'm really sorry about R coming through actually. I had a quick question. If you go on holiday, let's say, and you left off in the phase 2, but you stopped completely for about a week. When you do come back off holiday, where should you begin? Should you kick off where you left off, or should you apply the treat principle and then go from there?
Well, the good thing about the Back in Shape exercise routine is that wherever it is, phase 1, 2 or 3, you can do it anywhere. So I would say there's less of a reason to not do it while we are on holiday, but those things do happen. And again, we have to use the treat principle. And I can see that the live stream. Yeah, I think the weather's had a relapse here. It's pretty awful. But anyway, that's by the by. In answer to the question, the earlier that happens in the phase 1, 2, 3 process, the earlier we have a week off, the more disruptive it is. If we're up in phase 3, we're doing maintenance, then a week off actually is much less impactful on our overall recovery process. But in answer to the question, slowly go back in, slowly feed back in wherever you were before. The 50 to 75% can work. I'd argue that if you've had so go back in a little bit more slowly, but build back up relatively quickly. I would say by the end of that week, you should be back at where you were before.
Okay.
That's a difficult one, because I'm thinking there, you've got to do something that you're not going to want to do. The best thing is do what you can if it's involving lifting or setup. So, which you should have already, I would argue, have done before we got to this point. But also it's more a case of what do you do afterwards.
If you've got a long drive, or
if we've got that's what I'm thinking. We've got a long drive and you can't avoid it. The best thing there is as frequently as is practical. We don't want to drive 10 minutes and then stop every 10 minutes, because there's not even service stations that frequently. So that's one point. But when we get out the other end, when we finish that day, we must make time for phase 1, going through that routine in particular, getting some ice on the back, doing that in a sensible, proactive manner, because you may not feel bad. What often happens on those particular days is the day in of itself inside the spine do not have very good nerve supply. They don't get made aware of these things as quickly as one would hope. So it's often the day after that we get the soreness. So as soon as you finish, even if you're tired, I don't feel that bad, but I'm exhausted, I just want to go to bed, do your phase 1. At the very least, start stretching the towel and the ice. Do that before we go and turn down for the night. That's really, really important. Quite often patients come in and they say bad things for your body. You need to make time. It's more important to make time for doing those exercises. That means getting up a little bit earlier, or if it means going to bed a touch later, then we need to do that. Planning things rather than letting things happen to us is really, really the best way to deal with that, and just being proactive and taking charge.
Alex Vesco says, so true. I can do some, if not most, of my phase 2 and phase 3 workouts on trips.
It's in pieces of equipment, but the bands, you can stick them in your bag and you can do them anywhere on the planet, really. You could do them on a boat. If you went on a cruise, you could do them because you just stick them in your door. So it is possible to do the workout routine more or less everywhere. And we deliberately, again with the flexibility program as well, it's been created so that it's not too arduous from a time point of view. The workout in itself should take you, the strengthening part should take you really, once we're used to it, no more than half an hour. And the phase 1 itself as a routine is talking a 15 to 18 minute program itself a couple of times a day. So in the grand scheme of things, on a 24-hour period, we're maybe doing an hour and a half of exercise, an hour and a half of something good for us. There's plenty of other hours to do other things. And if we're talking about lying on the towel, we can be calling whoever we want while we're on the towel, multitasking with the ice, so it can all work quite well.
Okay, awesome. I'm just going to jump into YouTube.
Sure.
Richard Sylvester has asked here, I keep getting a pain behind the right knee when standing up and straightening my right
up. Just really isolate the back position. Maybe even take a bit of weight off the back by leaning on a chair and then retesting that movement and that. So remove load from the back, validate that it feels okay, shift your weight onto the other leg, validate again that it feels okay, then straighten the leg itself. And from recollection, I think that could be a plausible explanation, Richard.
Okay, Margaret has asked here, I have a lack of strength and I've had a lack of strength and muscle all my life, although very active. So it worries me that I'm now doing more strengthening exercises.
I would actually say I don't know which bit is worrying.
Well, I guess she said that she's had a lack of strength and muscle all of her life, even though that she's been quite active walking.
I assume that you mean it's a concern that you haven't done the stuff in the past, because I'd actually be concerned, and am concerned when I hear it with patients when they say, I do walking to stay fit. Walking is not acceptable at all in any way, shape or form for keeping your back and your body in good condition, good nick. It's the safest exercise that we get and encourage patients to do. They encourage you to do walking after you've, for example, had a surgery. We discussed that a couple of weeks ago, to get you walking up and down as soon as possible after back surgeries. Walking is a very low energy activity. Yes, we could say we've got hiking, we've got mountaineering, we've got those other bits and pieces, but generally walking for fitness, even if it's 10 kilometers a day, is the least demanding activity you can do, because we can do it for so long. It's not challenging. And unfortunately, we get a lot of people that get caught out by I sit in the clinic and I say, what do you do to stay in shape? I walk. That's not fitness. That's not well-being. That's not supporting your body. Walking uses basically zero, really bathing the hips, the knees and the ankles, articular surfaces, so they can stay healthy. We're moving our legs. I mean, the man here can do it here. That's it. That's our walking. That's all we're doing. We're not coming through full ranges of motion on a daily basis. We're not adequately bathing those articular surfaces in the hip, the knees, the ankles, the back, etc. We're not putting challenge on the muscles in different ranges as well. So then when we go and have to do something that requires more strength and stability, it can really knock us back, because we just don't have the strength. And if we feel like it's enough to keep us fit and healthy, then that's where we can get into a false sense of security. The best thing is, and a lot of the research is showing, it doesn't matter how late you start. And I've said this before, and I'll say it again, the Chinese proverb of the best time to plant a tree was 20 years ago. That would have been the best time to start the exercises, but the second best time is today. So building up those strengthening exercises, appreciating that we haven't done these before. We haven't done these maybe ever. Maybe in 10 years, maybe in 15, 20 years. So it's okay that it's going to be a little bit difficult and a little bit challenging, but everyone has the capacity to improve that. It's just, does everyone have the strength of will to do something hard for a consistent period of time, when the reward in some cases is limited until you get past that certain threshold? That is of 10 years. Although actually sometimes that actually works quite well, because it's just a massive shock to the system. But if we haven't been looking after ourselves appropriately for 10 years or more, then making some of these changes can be difficult to stick at for long enough to really start to see some solid results. And often you plateau too soon.
I think if you're working on the muscles and you're working on strengthening for the first time, just knowing that one, you should probably start quite light in the
Yep.
beginning, and two, that you're probably going to feel really sore the next day.
Yeah.
Just knowing that that's okay, and working through it, and also thinking about even your nutrition. I know that we've spoken about protein quite a bit as well, so just different things to consider.
Yeah, I mean, that's really important as well, and also noting often in those cases people don't realize or aren't aware of things like DOMS. I know one of the girls in one of the ladies in Back in Shape most recently has jumped up to phase 3 and was pretty sore everywhere after doing it. And it's knowing that actually that's the fact that we're working these muscles and they haven't been worked in a very long period of time, and they're going, whoa, that was a workout. And that quite often that can cause you to recoil. I'm not doing that again. My whole body was sore. Yes, because we haven't stimulated them in that way, maybe in years, maybe longer than that. And actually go back, like the example I mentioned earlier, that lady will go and do the exercises again at that intensity in 3 or 4 weeks, and all of a sudden she doesn't get the sore the next day. So it's massive in terms of how it can really strengthen you up, and the impact it can have if we can just persevere past that. But I know a lot of the guys that get to that phase 3, they already know this anyway, so it's fine.
Yeah, Margaret's just said, thanks, I wish your program had been around years ago. Thanks. New. And the next day, you absolutely feel it.
When we went back, I've said this before, when we went back after lockdown, 4 months out of our whole first week, you know, it really took it out of it. And if you're not aware of that, then I ramped up my stretch. So I was doing more stretching on my hamstrings and on my legs in particular, because they were the bits that were the recovery process, and they're going to reduce the hip mobility for a short period of time. So we have to be aware of that, but that's okay. It is perfectly acceptable to
asked on Facebook, can using the ice before a busy day help to prevent a relapse?
I don't really think the ice will help in that scenario. What I would say is you might find that doing the exercise, the phase 2 or phase 3, whichever phase you're in, might help. We discussed yesterday on the live stream about the importance of that stability for the spine. So if we've got a little bit of a pump in the muscles before we go out to work, and that sounds very bodybuilding term, it's thinking they're ready to go, that you might find actually helps a lot more. The ice would come afterwards, I would suggest, and be more effective afterwards, because it's more of a reactionary thing. We're reacting by using the ice afterwards rather than before.
Okay, and lastly, Ollie's just asked,
if we've got a relapse, we've got some muscle spasm going down into the legs, massage could be helpful from a point of view of keeping those hips nice and mobile. That's the biggest thing that's going to catch you out. Work them hard, which is perfectly acceptable. If you're not careful with regards to keeping those legs as mobile as possible while they're recovering, then it will start to pull a little bit on the back. So massage, we've got the Hypervolt here, so we just use that daily on the legs anyway, especially when we're working hard in the gym. It really helps to keep the pulls that we discussed in Back in Shape. Hammering in with elbows and knees and creating sort of more tissue damage, maybe not so great, but a gentle massage I think would be perfectly acceptable to help with fluid drainage.
Okay.
Which is the drainage of waste products from the body.
Okay, brilliant. I think that's everything for today. Thank you, everybody, and apologies once again for the streaming.
Yeah, sorry about the connection today. We'll have to look into what's happened there. I can see it's dropped quite a few frames on the live stream. So anyway, thanks for joining us, guys. Hopefully you guys have a great weekend. Helpful. If you do have any other questions, then please do post those in the comments below, and we'll be sure to get back to you guys. Have a great day, have a great weekend, and we will see you on Monday with another live stream. Somewhere underneath here, and if you want to stay up to date or tune in to some of our more recent live streams and the Q&As at the end of those, then that's going to be down here.